Lubana, you can start.
All right. It is with great pleasure that I'm here to introduce Karina Thompson, a fellow occupational therapist. Karina and I worked together early on in our careers, and through the past few decades, or should I say several decades, we have strengthened our personal and professional relationship. And Karina's vast experience as an occupational therapist was further enhanced when she obtained a second master's in orientation and mobility about 10 years ago, something I'm a little envious about because she brings such a wealth of knowledge that she's going to present today. It's really a rare blend of valuable skills as an occupational therapist and also as an O&M specialist to the population of visually impaired that she serves through the Mass Association for the Blind. Karina, I have to say, is ever willing to share her vast plethora of knowledge, and I've learned so much from her in the past several years. Thank you so much, Karina. And I know you will too in this very practical and informative presentation. So Karina, I'll hand it over to you now. And like Ram said, if questions do come up, please do type them into the chat. And I assure you we'll have time for everyone at the end of the session. So here you go, Karina.
Okay, thank you. So I share the screen now, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so I think if you just close this window, you should be okay.
There we go. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. All right. Thanks, Lubina. These following slides will be a little bit of a background in what orientation mobility does, but a lot of it will be a practical guide for you. So years ago, when I was working as a school-based OT, the head of my department approached me about pursuing a certification in O&M. And I was familiar with orientation mobility specialists because we had them working in the schools with us. They were an outside contract. But as I researched the field, it occurred to me it'd be a perfectly blended approach for OT, because OTs are task-based. We look at daily function as tasks, and for orientation and mobility, you need to travel and orient yourself to your destination to complete the task. So it just seemed like it was a good blend for me. And so the following is a description of the O&M specialist in the role working with individuals with a visual impairment. But just as O&M is enhanced by OT expertise, all professionals working in the vision field are a team and work best when we work together and understand our unique contributions. And I see when I go to seminars or just cross boundaries with other agencies, we all work together. And even though I'm an O&M specialist, I think everybody I work with, I see using a human guide, and it's wonderful to see that cooperation. And so by the end of this seminar, you hopefully will be able to identify the role that an orientation mobility specialist plays in vision rehab. You'll be able to describe the importance of direct teaching with individuals with a visual impairment. You'll be able to use guidance strategies and grasp the concept of the 5 points of travel, which is one of the core points of best practice for O&M professionals. So, orientation and comes from the word orient. The orientation part of it means where am I? Orientation asks and tell us where we are in relationship to destination, and mobility is the means by which we use travel to arrive at that destination. So towards that end, orientation and mobility specialists address skills for community access and independent travel for people with vision loss. They address negotiating the environment while maintaining orientation. And of course, with this, we offer support to family and staff and caregivers who are with individuals with a visual impairment so that they can, can complete these activities and strategies that make for an independent life. That is. Okay, so how can someone with a visual impairment travel safely? They can travel in a wheelchair. It can be a manual or a power wheelchair. Yes, people with a visual impairment can travel in a power wheelchair independently. They can use an anticipatory device like a white cane, also called a long cane. They can use sighted or human guide. The former term was sighted guide. Currently we use human guide, more practical because people do not need to be sighted to be a guide. People can also use a walker or a support cane to get around. So we work with all of those. The vision team, and this is a short list, but they are made up of optometrists, ophthalmologists, low vision specialists, teachers of the visually impaired in the United States, and I assume the rest of the world. TVIs work with students in school. Here in the US, it can be up to age 22. Orientation and mobility specialists like me. Occupational therapists who have a background in vision. Vision rehab therapists or teachers. It was the former term was vision rehab teachers. Now they're called therapists. Rehabilitation counselors or voc counselors. And then it kind of goes out like a ripple effect to anybody else who is involved. This is a core part of working as an orientation and mobility specialist in the teaching field. There's a difference between direct instruction versus incidental learning. Incidental learning is something that we all use if we have our 3 distance senses intact. And the distance senses are vision, hearing, and smell. So we learn, if we have all of those distance senses, we learn about our environment through scanning and comparing. It's not really even a thought process. I give you an example of going into a conference room. When you walk into that door, you understand through your distance senses the windows that are in the room, or if there are no windows, and how big the conference table is, that there's a conference table there, that there are chairs around the table. The chairs have arms or they don't. Do the chairs have wheels underneath them that will help them move? Is there coffee brewing? You might be able to smell the coffee. How many people are in the room, because you can hear how many people are in the room, but you can also see how many people are in the room. You know where they are placed. There are so many things that you learn when you go into a room or any kind of new situation that you learn incidentally. It just happens because of the senses at the base of it. Direct learning means that you're using, for people with a visual impairment, you're using primarily 2 distance senses. You're learning through the environment, about the environment, through auditory scanning, through your movement, through smell, and then capitalizing on any remaining vision that you have. So when you go into that new room, if you have a visual impairment, it's more difficult to take in the scene. Let's go back to direct instruction. A person who needs the direct instruction, if they have a guide in that room, let's say it's a human guide, the human guide will say to the individual, okay, we're in the conference room right now. There's a number of windows here. Windows are open or closed. There is a conference table that is about 12 feet long. It's very large. There are chairs around it, and it's a rectangular shape. There are a number of people sitting at one end. Where would you like to sit? So it's describing it so that the person is able to formulate a sense of what that room is like. Direct instruction can go way back with a little baby who's visually impaired. It has to start there. A little baby is not going to be able to understand about walking or crawling towards a ball if the ball cannot be seen. So that's where direct instruction starts at a very, very young age and goes throughout life, and is key importance to learning about your environment. It has to be direct. So you know that it's going to take longer for somebody to learn about the world if a lot of it has to be directly taught. That goes towards cognitive mapping. And so orientation and mobility specialists using direct teaching teach about how to build cognitive maps through incidental learning, but it's heavily supported by direct instruction. Individuals with a visual impairment need to be taught this, and taught this early. So you can see the world map there at the bottom right. That's what we think of a map. You know, we can close our eyes and have that vision in our mind. But people who have a visual impairment need to develop their own type of cognitive map, and it might not look at all like what we have. You know, they use different strategies to build that mapping, so that when they're able to go out into the world when they're an adult independently, they have that skill to know, oh, this is what I do to familiarize myself to this situation, because they already have those skills, those baseline skills. That's where an O&M specialist is especially helpful with providing the key skills to develop that. All right, guidance. Many types of guidance. At the base, you would have trailing or using voice guide. Trailing means that you use your hand, your arm, to move across a perimeter of a room or even an outside place to determine where you are. The disadvantage of that is it's very close. You don't have a long way in front of you to anticipate what's coming. But very often people use trailing as an adjunct to many parts of their world. You can use trailing. Well, you might even use trailing yourself, like at night. Maybe you need to get up and find where the light switch is, or you need to find your keys in the dark. What are you doing? You're using your hand to trail in front of you to find it and locate it. So it's more based on a tactile sense, which again is not a distance sense. Or voice guide. Sometimes people can walk with voice guide in front of them saying, come towards my voice, we're going in this direction, we're going left, we're going right. They can also use noise to guide ahead of them. The sound of music from a room will guide them to the room with a combination of many things that could be trailing. Human guide, which we're going to talk about in a little bit so that you'll have some experience with that. And that is more, of course, tactile based and very close to another person, where the individual holds on to the guide's arm and the guide proceeds. Very often people use a white or a long cane. They are interchangeable terms. The cane is used to anticipate obstacles in front of the person.
Wow.
People can use dog guides, and people who use dog guides are not, they can be trained by O&M professionals, but guide dog trainers are different from O&M specialists. Guide dog trainers could be O&M professionals, but by and large, they are there for the dog and to train the dog to be used with the human. And then, of course, you have electronic travel aids, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about. They primarily use laser or ultrasound to detect obstacles. They traditionally are used with a long cane and or a dog, not by themselves, although things are going so fast now that I wouldn't be surprised if in another few years, maybe a decade, it's going to be a lot different. It's very exciting field. All right, practical. Human guide, how to guide a person with a visual impairment. The following few slides are a graphic example of what a YouTube video clip that I'll show at the end will also demonstrate. Typically what we do, orientation mobility specialists do with a training like this, is to give a pictorial example, step by step, of how to guide. And we'll throw in some video too, but then the most important part is that we have the person do it with a partner and switch up so that they actually can feel what it's like to be guided. It's really huge to have that practical experience. So you have a part of it, but you don't have all of it as what we would typically do. So this is an example of what I mean about direct instruction, repetition, relearning. This is it, human guide. How to guide a person with a visual impairment. If you look at the graphic here, the person in front is the guide. The person behind is the person with a visual impairment that is holding the guide's arm just above the elbow. So, first part of doing human guide is talking to the person. Announce your name. Tell them who you are, what your name is. And the second part of that is, say you're not guiding. Say you're just greeting somebody who happens to have a visual impairment at a reception desk. Tell them your name, complete your conversation, and then say, okay, thank you very much, I'm on my way now, so that you know, the person knows that you've left. It's kind of embarrassing to not realize that somebody is not there anymore. You speak directly to the individual, not to somebody else who happens to be with them. This happens many times when I'm with somebody who's visually impaired. Say I'm guiding them and we might be going to a conference or a meeting or something, and another person greeting us will talk to me even though the subject of the matter is the person I'm with, and speak directly to the person at a normal volume, unless they, of course, have hearing impairment. And if you see the person might need some assistance, like say crossing a street, ask them if they need help. Maybe they don't. Don't push or pull the person. Give left and right directions as you're walking. Describe your surroundings, not in huge detail, but the salient features of the environment as you're traveling. You could announce a few feet before you're going out of the door that pretty soon we're going to come up to a door, we're going to go on the outside. The outside surface will feel different from here. It's pretty cold outside, so I'm glad you have a coat on, that kind of thing. Huge, verbally indicate surface changes. Surface changes can be the texture of the floor underneath you, from tile to carpet. It can be walking from a sidewalk onto grass. It's very important to indicate surface changes and inform when the destination has been reached and describing the route along the way. For example, even if you're going to get a cup of coffee in a coffee shop, you arrive at the counter and tell them that you've arrived at the counter. Maybe you can assist them in helping them to trail the counter and say, this is where we are. There might be a couple of people in front of us in line, but we'll be up to the counter soon, and then you can order your coffee. Never leave the individual that you're guiding in open space. Always give them an opportunity to ground themselves against something or on something, next to a wall, a countertop, a street sign. Make sure that they're comfortable where they are rather than trying to discern what is around them in the open space as you leave. Try to imagine what it would be like if it happened to you. Okay, so basic human guide. As you can see here, there are two hands. You offer your arm by tapping the back of your hand against the individual's hand. That allows them to trail up your arm and find your elbow and then grasp your arm just above the guide's elbow. Their hand, the grasping hand is like in a shape of a C. I tell people it's like you're holding on to maybe a soda can or a can of peas or something like that, so that your grip is there in that shape and it's held on firmly. The guide, here again, the guide is the person in front, stays a half a step ahead of the individual. The individual's arm is at 90 degrees, and you're walking at a relaxed and comfortable pace. I have seen some guides just automatically hold their own arm at a 90 degree. That's fine. If that's more comfortable, that's fine. All right, very often you're going to run into people who might have a mobility challenge. They might be a little off balance or have poor endurance, a little bit weak. So if they need that extra support, then you need to give it to them. You're going to bend, now you're going to bend your supporting arm to 90 degrees so the individual can apply weight to your arm. And you can see where their grasping arm is just above your elbow. Sometimes what you need to do is to have them place their arm on your forearm and tuck your own arm next to your rib cage, and even use your guide's other arm to cushion the individual's hand on top so that they're nice and secure. So as you're walking, sometimes you need to change sides. You might need to change arms. That involves the individual behind you placing both hands above the grip of the guide's arm. That's the first step. Then they move their original grip hand across the guide's back. Going to move it again, trailing across the guide's back to the guide's other arm. And as they trail, they sidestep into the new position and they resume the grip with the appropriate hand. Again, it's seeing it, you'll grasp it a little bit more easily than just talking about it and showing the pictures. Doorways involve a couple of things. Now your guide and the individual that you're guiding, they need to be more behind one another rather than to the side, so that you're narrowing the space that you're going through. So the guide gives the narrow passageway signal. To a person with a visual impairment, it's automatic. You put your arm, the guide puts their arm so it's moving directly in the middle of their back. This gives the signal to the person being guided that they need to sidestep so that they're immediately behind you. Then you tell the person, you've already told them that a doorway is coming up. Then you tell them that the door is either push or pull, and if it opens to the right or the left. That is so that they can put their arm up and hold the door with you as you go through the door. You don't want to be looking behind you at the person that you're guiding, because they will be guided right around in a circle like you are. So you want to make sure that all of these are in place before you walk through the door and resume basic hold. So this happens a real lot with, if you're guiding somebody, say in a conference room, is seating. So here you are, you're guiding. You can place, there's two ways you can have somebody sit down. Place the individual's hand on the back of the seat, and you can have your arm hold the back of the seat and they can trail down to find that. Or you can guide them to the chair so that their shins lightly touch the front of the seat. And that way they can tell, where the seat is. You can inform if the individual is in the front or the back of the seat. And then you allow them to sit. The other thing I should also tell you is that you need to tell them whether the seat has arms or not. That's going to make a difference. Remember, if you have that person that has a mobility challenge, you might want to be looking for a chair that does have arms. And certainly if the chair has wheels on it, best to inform the person. Maybe they want a chair with wheels on it. Maybe they don't. So there's a lot of description with that that you need to tell them about before you have them sit down. Stairs. Again, you're guiding to the stairs. Capitalize on whether there is a railing there. So you want to position yourself so that the individual can have the railing in one hand. You're going to approach the edge of the steps, guide. You're going to pause at the edge of the first step, and then you're going to make sure that their toes are at the edge of the step as well. You take the first step. You tell them that you're going to take a first step. Make sure that they're ready. And then they follow you just at your pace, one step behind. And of course, when you're finished completing the stairs, you want to tell them that the stairs are finished. Or if you're coming to a landing, that you're going to go around to the next level. Okay, so that's the description. Now I'm going to put up a YouTube clip of 4 different clips illustrating what we just went through. This comes from the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. They have great materials to use for training. So I'm going to use that, and hopefully this is going to come up.
Introduction to Sighted Guide. Many people with vision loss feel comfortable traveling independently, either while going to work, shopping, banking, or just visiting friends. But there may be times when a sighted guide comes in handy. For example, in crowded situations like office parties or street crossings, in unfamiliar places, or if the person has recently lost their sight and are just learning to get around. Whether you're encountering someone with vision loss as a family member, caregiver, staff person in a nursing home or hospital, or even as a friend or coworker, this series of videos will provide you with the skills and confidence to guide someone comfortably, respectfully, and safely. Whenever you're guiding someone who is blind or partially sighted, it's important to remember to describe your surroundings, like the size of a room, positioning of a door, in detail, whenever possible, to help the person you're guiding better understand their environment. Speak directly to the person you're guiding when you're addressing them. Observe the person and be empathetic if they display any symptoms of nervousness. Stop walking before you approach obstacles or unusual terrain so that you have time to describe them to the person you're guiding. For more help about living with vision loss, please visit www.cnib.ca or contact CNIB at 1-800-56 Basic Sighted Guide Techniques. When approaching a person with vision loss, you should initiate the greeting by identifying yourself. If you already know the person, you can simply say, "Hi Mike, it's Lucy." Before offering your assistance, you should always ask if it's needed. If so, gently touch the back of the person's hand with your own, as an indication for them to take your arm. If no assistance is needed, you can simply wish the person a good day and move on. The person you're guiding will take your arm just above the elbow, placing their fingers on the inside of your arm and their thumb on the outside. This is a very natural way for the two of you to be connected. Never take the person's arm or hand, or try to push or pull them along. Not only is this considered rude, but it's less effective in trying to guide someone. The person you're guiding may have a preference as to whether they hold your left arm or right arm. Either way is fine. Usually they'll take the lead and indicate which side they prefer. The person's grip will typically be firm enough to maintain contact with you, but relaxed enough to be comfortable. Hold your arm naturally in a straight, relaxed position at your side. The person you're guiding should be at your side about half a step behind you. Position yourself so that the shoulder of your guiding arm is aligned directly in front of the shoulder of their grip arm. Their arm will be relaxed, with their elbow bent at about 90 degrees and held close to their body. Take care not to stand too close, as this can be uncomfortable and may make you trip over each other. Also, do not be too far apart, as this takes up too much space and is ineffective. There may be times when you'll guide someone who needs slightly more support. In this case, you'll want to stay close together. The other person may also hold your arm more tightly, or even place their arm through yours, resting their hand on top of your forearm for maximum stability. In this case, you should bend your arm at the elbow at a 90-degree angle to provide the support. You may also be asked to assist somebody who's using a walker. In this case, you would hold on to the front of the walker and walk at a pace that is comfortable for the person you are guiding. Sometimes you may need to switch sides, either to open a door, use the handrail on stairways, or simply to alternate arms. In the steps which follow, you'll learn how to switch your guiding arm from your left to your right. If switching from your right to your left guiding arm, simply reverse the process. After indicating the need to switch arms, the person you're guiding will place their left hand on your left arm, directly above where their right hand is positioned. They're now holding on to you with both hands. Next, they'll release their right hand while bringing their right hand gently across your back until they connect with your right arm. The right hand should now be holding onto your right arm just above your elbow. You may want to gently extend your bent elbow behind you to make it easier for the person to find it. They can now take a small step over to your right side, and the two of you can resume the normal guiding position. You may find it easier to first practice this technique when standing still, and then again when you're walking somewhere. For more helpful tips about living with vision loss, narrow spaces, doorways, and stairs. In spaces where it's awkward to walk side by side, such as in narrow pathways, doorways, and in crowds, You will need to walk almost directly in front of the person you are guiding. When approaching a narrow space, cross your guiding arm behind you so that your arm is now positioned diagonally behind your back. This will indicate to the other person that you're entering a narrower space. The person you're guiding will then fully extend their gripping arm and step directly behind you. You may need to give them a verbal cue if they don't move behind you on their own. You're now walking in single file, one arm's length between you, to prevent the other person from stepping on your heels. When there's enough space to resume the normal guiding stance, return your arm to its original position. The person you're guiding will understand that they are to return to the standard position, half a pace between you. Notify the person you're guiding when you're approaching a door, making sure to describe the type of door and the direction it opens. For example, we're approaching a large door that opens to the left and inwards. The person with vision loss will switch sides if necessary to assure that they're on the same side as the door's hinges. You may need to stop walking so that you have time to describe the door properly before you reach it. But for safety reasons, the person you're guiding will hold the door open for themselves. Once you open the door, let them make hand contact with it. They'll then hold the door open until you have both cleared the doorway and close it if necessary. If the person you're guiding is unable to control the door, for example, if the person is elderly or if the door is very heavy, it becomes your responsibility to hold it open and close it. Tell the person with vision loss when you're about to climb up and down stairs or curbs. Approach these squarely, never at an angle, and come to a full stop before you proceed up or down. While stopped, describe the stairs to the person, including the approximate number of stairs. The person can then align their body next to you and use their cane to get a better sense of the size of the step and the riser. For more helpful tips about living with vision loss, please visit seating. Guide the person directly in front of their seat until their knees are almost touching it. Let them know they are in front of a seat and then describe what kind of seat it is. For example, whether it's a couch, bench, rocker, or office chair with wheels. You should also tell them if the chair has arms or unusual features. The person you're guiding will examine the seat with one hand to determine its characteristics and check if there's anything on it. Once it's been inspected, they'll turn around and sit down. Taking a seat from the back. This procedure is used when taking a seat at a table. Place your own hand on the back of the chair and tell the person you're guiding that you're standing in front of a chair. Be sure to let them know whether or not the chair is pushed into the table. They'll then move their gripping hand down your arm until they are touching the back of the chair. At this point, you should step away slightly so they can locate the table with their free hand. This helps the person you're guiding judge how far to pull the chair out before they sit down. Finally, ask if they need assistance in taking a seat. For example, pulling out the chair for them if it's pushed in. Row seating. This procedure is used for places such as auditoriums and concert halls. First, walk in the usual guiding position to the row where the seats are located, and stop at the end of the row. While maintaining the guiding grip, let the person know that you have arrived at their row. You may need to switch sides so that you can enter the row first. Now proceed by sidestepping together along the row, turning your bodies as needed so as not to step on the feet of other patrons. Let the person you're guiding know once you've reached their seat. They'll then back up until they feel the seat against the back of their knees before sitting down. When it's time to leave, you should stand up first, and if necessary, pass in front of the person you're guiding so that you're in a position to lead them out. They'll grip your arm, and both of you will sidestep out together until you are in the aisle. For more help about living with vision loss, please visit
Okay, so that is a great source for training and just to review. And again, that's from the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. They are very, very good. All right, the long cane, the white cane, not called a stick. A few notes about it. We, orientation and mobility specialists, use a lot of teaching with the white cane. So a white cane is used in a sweeping arc to anticipate. It's an anticipator of ground obstacles or drops ahead. It doesn't identify objects at head height, of course. That's where upper body protective techniques or even electronic travel aids can help. And we also teach upper and lower body protective techniques so people are safe when they're walking. We prescribe and measure for different types of canes. It can be a folding cane. It can be a rigid cane. It can be an NFB cane, which is a very long type of cane. We can use different types of cane tips depending on the individual's need. It can go anywhere from a pencil tip, which is the classic kind of tap tap that you might hear, or it can be a big ball tip. It can be a marshmallow rolling tip. There's lots of different kinds of tips depending on what the person's needs are. When guiding, a person may choose to use the cane or not. They could fold up the cane and hold it or put it in a holster. They can hold it shepherd's hook style is what we call, or they can even sweep if they want. A white cane or long cane is not to be used as a support cane. It will break if it's used as a support cane. It's very light. Now, support canes can be marked with the universal white and red markings for identification, but obviously support canes are not suitable to be functionally used as a white cane because they cannot be placed in front without losing its functional feature. So it can be marked as an identifier, but it can't really be used as detecting obstacles. So the 5-point travel system. As part of best practice, orientation and mobility specialists teach the 5-point travel system. It's a scaffolded approach that enables the individual with a visual impairment to make use of additional information when traveling in order to maintain orientation. So, number one, we show the individual what the shape of the route in front of them is going to be like. And it is according to the Braille cell. If any of you are familiar with Braille, the Braille cell has 6 dots. And according to that, it could be an I-shaped route. It could be an L-shaped route. It could be a U-shaped route or a Z or zigzag route. When we teach a route, we always tell the person what the shape of the route is going to be. We can actually trace it on their palm beforehand. We make sure that they understand that before we even start out. The second part is identifying compass or cardinal directions. If you're outside, you can actually utilize the sun if it's a sunny day to determine where north is. But we can also just determine it arbitrarily as a form of naming and also for spatial understanding. The third thing is that we always have to have names of streets or hallways if you're working inside. Everything has to have a name. Kind of goes with the next thing called landmarks. If it doesn't have a name, if a hallway doesn't have a name, we'll ask the individual to name it. We try to have the individual do the naming because then it's going to be remembered more than if we say, well, this hallway wall is called window wall. It's much better if they name it themselves. Then we make sure that we identify landmarks along the route. A landmark could be, well, a fire hydrant. It could be the end of a building line, because when you're using your cane and you're sweeping your cane on the sidewalk or tapping the cane, you can identify when there are differences in the route itself. A building line might give way to an open door front, so that's a landmark. Another landmark could even be sound, or the sound of traffic that's getting heavier. That would be an indication you're getting closer to a destination or away from it. Even smell, if you're going past a bakery, that will be an identifier. So you have all 4 of those pieces learned in the forward route, to the point that no cues are needed. The instructor can back away and the person is independent with it. But we're not done yet. We need to learn that whole route again in reverse order. Remember cognitive mapping? This is what happens with cognitive mapping. So as you can see, it takes quite a while to learn about your environment. Other orientation mobility skills that go along with the 5 points of travel are learning body alignment and what body planes are. That starts at a very, very young age. When a little 3-year-old starts using a cane, learn what parts of your body are in alignment with your environment, and so that they can have a very nice straight line of travel as they grow up. We teach them self-protection techniques. We learn and teach about echolocation, the use of sound as it bounces off different barriers. We certainly teach cane techniques. And then all of the above, the 5 points of travel, these other skills are incorporated into practical application, such as street crossings and intersections. Do you remember that picture at the very first slide? Walking through open space with our cane or without. Using public transportation. We're talking buses, trains, airplanes. And using these strategies to independently make familiarization in new environments. And intertwined in all of this is self-advocacy. Very, very important for safety, to be able to tell somebody if you need help, to ask for help, or deny that help is needed, is all part of what we do with the individual. So again, this the YouTube videos references here, and these are the rest of them. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Karina. That was an amazing and really very practical presentation. I know, and you can't say it often enough. What I really, really liked is how you emphasize first the team approach. It's just so critical when we serve individuals with vision impairment. And, and I talked a little bit about it in the first presentation of this webinar series, and I hope everyone really noticed how it's always the person first. It's a person with a visual impairment. And I think, for any aspect of vision rehab that we do, but more so for orientation and mobility, as you provide, we as sighted people provide that guide, it's really all about the person we're helping. And I think that came across loud and clear. So, and I can say personally for myself, I went through a training, that you did for O&M just to learn more about it. And, what I want to point out, a point that you really mentioned and went in detail with is the etiquette pieces. We as sighted individuals tend to take that piece so, I almost want to say complacently and nonchalantly, that we forget how critical it is when we're serving this population. The whole piece about being respectful and describing and just everything you did. So thank you. It was, You
Well,
brought
that's,
back.
that's a part of the whole direct teaching too, and incidentally, because we just take in everything incidentally, and we have to bring ourselves back to remembering that.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. This was amazing. I know it brought back so much, and I know everyone who listened to you and those of us who work with this population are certainly have a lot of tools now to put into practice. Thank you.
I echo what Lubaina said. Thank you so much. This was really an informational session. I'm going to have to go back and watch the recordings again and take more.
Yes.
So thank you.
That's overlearning and repetition. We all have to do that. Yes.
Yes, and those video resources were amazing as well.
Yeah.
So we can go for questions. I didn't see any questions in the chat. So at this point,
I see Sonal has raised her hand. So Sonal, I think you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, Karina. Can you?
yes, Sonal, go ahead.
So this was an amazing session. And I recognized a lot of techniques that I actually learned from my vision aid students who are blind. And I got chance to live with them and work with them. And they taught me.
Yes.
But I have one question. This was a new technique that I learned here, was that you touch the back of your hand to let them find your elbow.
Yes.
You know, and now I have one question which I have encountered many times, but was that how do you indicate if you want to give them a hug?
If you want to hug them?
Yeah. Do just tell them and all that, as well as shake hand?
Yeah. I definitely precede it with, if they can hear, obviously, if they don't have a hearing impairment. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Is it all right? Is it all right? I'd like to give you a hug. Is that all right? Now I'm going to shake your hand. Is that all right? Or, so that they know, and then they can, a lot of times people will just extend their hand anyway. If it kind of take your cue from them. But I'd always preface it with
Thank you.
Verbal. Yeah.
It was an amazingly great talk. I'm going to come back again and again.
Glad you have the video.
For further training. Yeah. Thank you.
I agree, Sonal. I think coming back to it, even though I've done the practical part that Karina talked about, actually gone through it and, done the role playing as a person with vision impairment as well as a guide, I can't tell you enough how much the repetition helps, because it seems simple, but it's so difficult to remember some of these basic things that Karina pointed out. So, I know I'll be watching it again and again.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions from anyone? Feel free to unmute your mic and ask the question.
Yes, Karina, this is Sabera Shah. I'm one of the ophthalmologists. It was a very good talk. And one of the takeaway point is, and I totally agree with all this gentleness and how you approach patient. I work with the diabetic patient, and one thing I have noticed working for so many years with these kind of situation is that patients are newly blind. They are sighted for say 40 years, and suddenly they found that they have lost vision in both eyes because of retinopathy. It's patient gets very angry. And I think approaching those people, we have to be very, very careful how you talk to them or how you guide them. So people who are blind for many years, they have learned how to maneuver themselves. And but this newly found blindness, I think that is very, very apprehensive. These patients are not only they're anxious, but they're angry. So I think the approach to them, you have to be very gingerly take this situation and talk to them, guide them to their chair, or have you talk to them. If you say that, yes, you have lost your vision, but you will it will be okay. It may take months or it may take weeks before you start seeing improving your vision.
Right.
So I think that part I got from you, that you have to have so much patience with this babe, this client.
And it does make a big difference between when you experienced the loss of vision. Makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Yeah. And we are seeing more, people later in life with this. And it's that whole psychological adjustment is huge. You do have to be gentle. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a great presentation, Karina.
Thank you, Sabira. Great comments and good perspective from you.
Thank you.
I think Alibai has a question.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Lubaina. It was a wonderful presentation. Karina, this was really an amazing presentation. I knew some things, like Sunal said earlier. I learned something more today. In fact, the first time I was able to guide somebody who was visually impaired was at one of our conferences at MIT.
Yeah.
And this gentleman, he told me, I never knew basically how to, the courtesies of extending your help to somebody else. And then he asked me, could you lead me to the door? I said, sure. And then he offered me his hand, said, just touch your elbow with mine. I said, sure. So I'll follow you. So he was guiding me how to help guide him, which I did.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. It was a very amazing presentation. I wish this could be shared with as many people as possible, because it'll show them, for people like me as well, as to how to extend your help to others, lest they feel that you're, like you said, being discourteous to them.
Yes.
But I had a question for you. With these new advanced technologies that are available or coming to be offered to those who are visually impaired, how do these technologies add to what you just said, or are they changing any way that O&M people are telling others how to go about helping the visually impaired, or these technologies are not having any impact? For example, I heard somewhere that I think in South Korea, all the roads are marked at your human, height. All the streets, it's written in Braille. So when somebody is walking on those streets themselves, they can feel with their hands and read the Braille and then turn around, so they can orient themselves when they are usually taking a route that's mostly traveled by them.
Yeah.
But in cases of new advanced technologies coming in, will it change, or has it changed anything that you feel for it particularly?
Primarily what's happening now, and I can see it being more advanced, is the use of the spectacles with scanning the environment. And they can be either for low vision people, it enhances the environment, or for people who have no functional vision, it can actually be a voice guide of a real person that's seeing the environment. That's the biggest thing I see right now, although it doesn't take away from use of the cane, but it does enhance it. That's what I see right now. I think that, I mean, I'm not an inventor or anything, but I can see things going more along in that line. Individually, there are so many countries that have some really amazing things that you can tell, like the one that you were talking about, that that there's been an attention made to individuals with a visual impairment as part of making accommodations and just in the world that sometimes we don't see here in the United States. So yeah, take cues from there. So there's two, there's individual changes and more civic changes that are happening. I wish they would happen quicker in the United States, but that's a whole different story.
So thank you so much.
That was a great question, Alibai. Saranya, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, Rebana. I want to just update about affordable technologies which can be offered to the visually impaired, particularly in India. So right now we are managing them to use technology with smartphones. We have few apps which particularly tell them where they are, the location exactly, and how crowded it is. And particularly they use during the train travels and during the while trying the buses. They come to know where the stopping is, whether they have achieved the destination or not. So we are advising our clients to use those apps because since everyone has smartphones now, and along with that, we have a broad usage of smart canes in India. It comes around INR 3,000 rupees within that, including the white cane, which has to be attached with it. So it has that ultrasound sensory feedback, which gives them around a range of 65 degree, almost to the chest level. So it's kind of virtual arc up to chest level. So they come to know the low level of tree branches and any litter bins or any transformers or any barricades before them up to 3 meters distance.
Yeah.
So many feel it is quite useful for them, particularly in the new environment where they're entering for the first time. And also adjusting with smart cane is quite difficult because many of the elderly population is avoiding that, and more youngsters are feeling great with that smart cane, and it's the cost also very affordable for them. So I think we can start with the very minimal level of affordable sensory gadgets for them to begin with.
Yeah, you speak.
In India, it's very difficult to maintain a guide dog, the temperature and the roads,
I can imagine.
the stray dogs attack everyone. We thought of this project 2 years back with Mr. Ian Cox, who came from Australia. So we talked about the more maintenance and the cost of efficiency to spend on the dog, everything.
Yeah.
So depending upon the culture, the country's economic level, we have to think innovatively to use the available resources as much as possible. And these two smart canes are indigenously made, one by the IIT and one by the another company, Torchit, from India itself.
Sounds like you have another topic involved.
And we have many funded projects to distribute the devices at free of cost.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I want to also mention that VisionAid has two devices, portable devices, the VisionAid Wand, which is about an arm length device, and the VisionAid Haptic Torch, which you can carry in your pocket.
Yeah.
And both of these are again sensory. They use ultraviolet and infrared signals to give haptic or audio feedback. And very soon we are bringing out an echolocation headset, so people can wear this on their head. And it actually helps echolocate exactly where they are.
I mean, it's a whole, didn't want to touch on that because we could have done the whole thing. But that, that's huge. That's what I mean about the future is looking very bright.
Yeah. We might do a whole other talk on.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. So just, this is Ali again, just one more comment, Karina. I was just wondering while you were presenting this, that post COVID-19, there might be some differences again, I believe, in the O&M philosophy of teaching. People want to be at a certain more distance or maybe the physical touch or how close you are. Otherwise, I think there will be some changes, and I'm not sure how many will be quick or how will it take place, but I'm sure there'll be some changes, I think.
Yes, and that does go along with the previous person who was talking. That it's huge with us because of the COVID-19. I mean, there are some people who have multiple disabilities that probably won't be able to, but use anything but like a tactile base. But we have to do something with it, and the technology is one out with it. Yeah, it's been quite devastating because you need to maintain, especially if you're teaching, safety-wise, you need to be close to a person. It's teaching street crossings.
So all the more, I'm a little wiser today now. I said all the more now, I'm a little wiser today after this talk.
Yeah.
a bit more wiser.
Good. Me too.
Okay, and if we don't have any other questions, we can end. We are past 8:30.
I don't see any other questions. Just a lot of positive comments, Karina. I think all the participants definitely are going to take a lot of what you presented and apply it. Certainly sounds like it. You'll be able to see all the chat comments later.
Yes, yes, a lot of positive comments on the chat, which you should definitely look at. Just a couple of announcements before we close. For more information about webinars, go to training.visionaid.org. That's the VisionAid Online Academy website. You'll find a link for webinars at the top of the page, which has a list of all the ongoing webinars, both the past and the future ones. The next session is going to be Thursday night in the US at 10 p.m., which is 7:30 a.m. In India on Friday. And that's a very interesting topic. Again, keeping the multidisciplinary approach in mind. This is by Neha Sharma, who's a speech and language pathologist at Perkins School for the Blind. She's going to be talking about how to communicate with children with MDVI, multiple disabilities and vision impairment. So it's going to be an interesting topic. Next Monday, we have another excellent topic by Dr. Linda Lawrence, who is an ophthalmologist who has done extensive work in low vision. She'll be talking about pediatric low vision. So that's Monday night, US time, 10 p.m. and Tuesday morning, India time at 7:30 a.m. So tune in for those sessions if you're interested. And if you'd like to learn more about VisionAid, please go to www.visionaid.org and you can learn more about the work we're doing or support the programs like these and several other programs which we run. So with that, I'm going to pause the recording, and if anyone wants to stay back, they're welcome to stay back. But if those who have to leave may feel free to drop at this time.